Just to introduce the Honourable Tim Watts. Tim Watts is Australia's Deputy or Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs and was appointed to the role after the ALP's stunning electoral victory, just 3 months ago. Alongside his colleague and Senior Minister, Foreign Minister Penny Wong, Tim Watts has leapt into the role and has promised to deliver a more energised approach to foreign affairs. I was very heartened to read a speech that Tim made at the recent Australia-Africa Day celebrations in Canberra. On that occasion, the Deputy Minister said that more can be done, will be done to Australia by Australia to progress what is a special relationship with Australia and many countries on the African continent. Tim Watts is also well qualified the role in foreign affairs. Since 2013, Tim Watts has represented the people of Gellibrand, west of Melbourne, which is a very fast emerging area and has it's one of the most diverse electorates in Australia. It's an electorate where I think more than 2/3 of the people were either born overseas or their parents were born overseas, and it's got a very high number of African residents, which makes Tim Watts the perfect choice to launch the 20th edition. So please welcome Deputy Minister Tim Watts. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction, Bill. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I acknowledge also any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are with us here today. Like all members of the new Labor Albanese government, I also recommit myself to the full implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, Voice, Treaty and Truth, and as Australia's new Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs, commit myself to centring Indigenous voices and practices in our foreign policy as part of the new government's Indigenous foreign policy approach, an approach that I believe has strong prospects in Africa. Thank you again, Bill, for your introduction, and thanks to all of your team at PayDirt for bringing us together again for Africa Down Under after the disruptions of the pandemic. It's so much nicer to see people in person rather than just little disembodied faces on digital screens. To the Honourable Mining Ministers visiting from Africa and delegations here today, welcome to Perth, and thank you for travelling so far to be with us here today. Can I also give a special mention to the heads of mission from African nations who live with us in Canberra. Thank you for coming here today as well and travelling not quite as far, but still a long way from Canberra to Western Australia to be with us today. I've been in the role for less than 100 days, but it's been a real pleasure for me to engage with the ambassadors and the diplomatic corps from Africa in Canberra, and I really look forward to continuing to engage with you in the future. I'd also like to acknowledge the Government of Western Australia and the Honourable Bill Johnson, the WA Minister for Mines and Petroleum, Corrective Services and Industrial Relations. Thank you for your continued support for Africa Down Under and Africa Australia Week. This conference has become a focal point for Australia's engagement with the countries of Africa. And of course, it's only logical that we're gathered here in Perth. Western Australia has become the heart of Australia's mining industry. And with its Indian Ocean coastline and westward orientation, Western Australia is Australia's gateway to Africa. Now, the great representation at this event from countries across Africa and so many Australian businesses speaks volumes about the ties that our continents already share. Australia is a proudly multicultural nation. It's home to more than 300 ancestries and to the oldest continuing culture on Earth. As Bill was saying, in my own electorate in Victoria, in Melbourne's West, 2/3 of my constituents were either born overseas or have a parent born overseas. And it's this diversity that connects Australia with the world. African people's connections to Australia go back well over 200 years, and many of them tell a story of tenacity in the face of hardship. Fanny Finch, for example, a London-born businesswoman of African heritage and a single mother of 4, ran successful restaurants in the Victorian gold rush towns of Forest Creek and then Castlemaine. She was also known as the first known woman to cast a vote in an Australian election in 1856, 50 years before women were granted the right to vote. Now, in the end, that vote wasn't counted, but what a wonderful assertion of her dignity and what an impressive act of courage. Today, things are very different. Almost 500,000 Australians are of African heritage and make outstanding contributions to our society, our economy and our nation. And I am really proud to represent so many of them in the Australian Parliament. Examples of the outstanding members of the African-Australian diaspora in our community include lawyer and human rights advocate Niall Dole Nguyen, who works tirelessly to protect the rights of marginalised communities and empower migrant and refugee women. I'm proud to call her a friend. My parliamentary colleague, Dr. Anne Ali, the Minister for Early Childhood Education and the Minister for Youth, whose electorate in Cowan is just north of where we meet today. Dr. Ali's expertise in countering violent extremism is matched by her passion for helping the people, families and communities affected by radicalisation. And Perth's own Peter Boll, Australia's star 800-metre track runner. 2.46 million Australians were enthralled watching him run at the Tokyo Olympics, where he placed fourth. And this year in Birmingham, Peter won silver in the Commonwealth Games. There are so many more African Australians in our society, sports people, performers, business people and community figures who make Australia what it is today and remind us of the many ties that bind Australia and the many nations of Africa. I'm proud that my community in Melbourne's West is home to some of Australia's largest African Australian diasporas, and it was this connection with these communities that led me to visit Kenya and Ethiopia in 2018 to better understand the journey that they had travelled to become a part of our nation and to explore the continuing relationships that they maintained with their African countries of origin. Our continents and our peoples are connected, but the Australian government has not always engaged with African countries as deeply or as knowledgeably as we could. This has been to our detriment. We know that by 2050, Africa is projected to represent a quarter of the world's population, and by 2060, 1.6 billion Africans will have entered the middle class. And so, reinvigorating our relationships with African nations is a key focus for me as Australia's Assistant Minister for Foreign Affairs. Importantly, I'm looking forward to hearing from you about your own priorities. I've already had the honour of participating in several Africa-themed events in recent months, and later this year I plan to visit West Africa, where I'll meet with the Ghanaian and Nigerian governments and open the 2022 edition of the West Africa Mining Security Conference in Accra. African nations are important partners, and the Australian government wants to expand our engagement and cooperation in a range of fields, including through social connections, trade, investment and security collaboration. Because if the pandemic has taught us anything, it's that the stability and prosperity of all countries are interlinked. Our global strategic environment is shifting fast, and we face unprecedented global challenges. Instability and insecurity threatens the international rules-based order and our shared peace and prosperity. The Australian government will continue to stand up for the global rules-based order that protects the sovereignty of nations. Australia's Foreign Minister, Penny Wong, recently said that while Australia may not be a global power, we do have global interests. Our global interests matter in their own right, but they also have implications for our region. So across the globe, we will continue to promote democratic principles and effective governance. Another challenge that's top of mind is climate change, which is already disproportionately affecting African countries. The Australian government will work with our African partners on facing and responding to the challenges of climate change, including food insecurity and and the energy transition. The Australian mining industry has a vital role to play in meeting growing energy transition demands. Australian companies are world leaders in the mining of critical minerals like cobalt, lithium and silicon, all essential in technologies that we need for a sustainable future. Their expertise can help to support African nations to take sovereign advantage of your resource wealth. This will be more important than ever as we work to rebuild economies and societies battered by the pandemic. And the Australian government will continue to champion predictable and fair regulatory environments where businesses and investments can flourish for a shared benefit. The dedication and energy of Australian mining companies, along with African governments who have recognised the value and expertise of Australia's mining industry, is already contributing to Africa's economic recovery. Australian mining companies have invested an estimated $40 billion across the African continent, employing thousands of people, contributing substantial revenue to host countries and sharing Australian expertise and technology. One excellent example of Australian technology and innovation which empowers African nations is Digital Earth Africa. And I'm pleased to offer a warm welcome to Digital Earth Africa board member, the Honourable Samuel Jinapor, Minister for Lands and Natural Resources in Ghana, who will be joining us later in this conference. The satellite information generated by Digital Earth Africa will help with the discovery, planning and governance and transparency of resource developments, benefiting governments and communities and resource developers alike. It also captures patterns of land use, urban development and climate change impacts, which are of immense value to policymakers and are worth billions of dollars to Africa's economy. Digital Earth Africa has opened its new office in South Africa thanks to the South African National Space Agency. And if you'd like to find out more about Digital Earth, I encourage you to visit Geoscience Australia's booth in the exhibition space next door, as I did before conference proceedings started today. The Australian government also recognises the importance of investing in skills of people and capacity of institutions. This has a long-term payoff for individuals, communities and societies. And that's why we're helping to build capacity in the mining sector of Africa will be a focus for us. We want to help African governments deliver responsible, accountable and effective mining governance. Through the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, we intend to offer new Australia Awards short courses focusing on the mining sector in Africa in 2023. We will ensure more women are able to access these capacity building initiatives, helping to build their pathways into senior roles in mining. It is also my hope that we'll see more women participate in this conference in future years. Australian mining companies contribute economically to African countries, but importantly, they have also earned a reputation for integrity and corporate responsibility, mining safety, and ensuring environmental sustainability and protection for their developing workforce. Last year, companies like Base Resources, Parenti Group, and Walkabout Resources were recognised for their development initiatives through Africa Down Under's Australia Africa Minerals and Energy Group Mining Awards. Their initiatives included scholarship programs for young people in Kenya, apprenticeships for Malagasy youth, a training centre for underground mining skills in Botswana, and the building of a school, church and mosque in Tanzania. In particular, I recognise the important information sharing and coordination role of the Australian Africa Minerals and Energy Group, its board members and its CEO, Roger Staley. The group excels at promoting best practice in the mining industry and supports members to embrace their environmental, social and governance responsibilities. I understand that the AAMEG Awards ceremony will be held tomorrow evening, so congratulations to all the finalists and good luck. I'd also like to extend a thank you to Minister Bill Johnson and his Department of Mines, Industry Regulation and Safety here in West Australia for offering to share mining government expertise with visiting delegations from Africa in Perth this week. Excellencies, Honourable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the Australian Government believes that Australian technology and private sector expertise can contribute to the peace and prosperity of Africa. Because we are all, government, industry and community, stakeholders in our shared success. Before I finish, I want to reiterate one thing. The Australian Government takes our relationships with African nations seriously. I'm keen to hear from you. We're keen to find ways to work together with you towards our shared interests. For our visiting African delegations, I hope that you will have a chance to experience the story of Australia's rich diversity, a diversity of peoples, cultures, languages and landscapes. It's really important for us that we are projecting modern Australia to the world. A story which starts with our First Nations peoples, who represent the oldest living culture on Earth, and a story that extends to the modern, multicultural Australia of today, with its storied African links. I hope you enjoy the conference and Africa Australia Week. Thank you all for being here today.